Throughout his life, John Lewis stood for people's rights. Born on an Alabama cotton farm into a segregated America, he'd not only lived to see an African-American elected president, he would be a major part of making it happen.
Tonight we gather here in this magnificent stadium in Denver because we still have a dream. We still have a dream.
Lewis, growing up, was angered by the unfairness of the Jim Crow South. He credited Martin Luther King Jr. for inspiring him to join the civil rights movement, and eventually Lewis would become one of its most prominent leaders. As a student, he organized sit-ins at lunch counters. In the early 60s, he was a freedom rider, challenging segregation at interstate bus terminals across the South. The embodiment of nonviolence, he frequently suffered beatings by angry mobs. Lewis, 23 years old at the time, was the youngest speaker at the 1963 March on Washington.
We do not want our freedom gradually, but we want to be free now.
Then, 2 years later, led a march for voting rights in Selma. On the Edmund Pettus Bridge, he and the other marchers were met by heavily armed state and local police. They were set upon and beaten, Lewis suffering a fractured skull. It would be forever remembered as Bloody Sunday. The images of brutality shocked the nation, galvanizing support for the Voting Rights Act signed into law by President Lyndon Johnson. Lewis never lost his young activist spirit, taking it from protest to politics. Standing up for what he believed was right, Lewis was arrested more than 40 times by police, according to his congressional office.
I'm on my way, and we're going to win this race.
He was elected to city council in Atlanta, then to Congress in Washington, representing Georgia's 5th District, fighting against poverty and for health care while working to help younger generations by improving education. He reached out to young people in other ways, co-writing a series of graphic novels about the civil rights movement, winning him a National Book Award. In a life of so many moments and great achievements, it was the achievement of another in 2008 that perhaps meant the most: the election of President Barack Obama.
We have never been just a collection of individuals or a collection of red states and blue states. We are and always will be the United States of America.
A dream Lewis admits was too impossible to consider decades before, even as he fought to forge its foundation.
This is an unbelievable period in our history. Martin Luther King Jr. will be very pleased to see what is happening in America. This is a long way from the March on Washington. It's a great distance from marching across that bridge in Selma in 1965 for the right to vote.
In 2011, after more than 50 years on the front lines of civil rights, Lewis received the nation's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, placed around his neck by America's first black president. Lewis wasn't content to just making history. He was also dedicated to preserving it. Consider the impetus of the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture. And he never stopped stirring up good trouble, as he liked to call it, boycotting the inaugurations of George W. Bush after the contested 2000 election, and vocally opposing Donald Trump in 2017, citing suspicions of Russian election meddling. At a protest against President Trump's immigration policy, the congressman, by then an elder statesman of the Democratic Party, riled up the crowd with words he had lived by as an activist, as a lawmaker, as a leader.
We must never, ever give up. We must be brave, bold, and courageous.